The Grass is Always Greener. Chapter 5. After a lot of yelling, freaking out, and accusations flying all around, everyone finally settled on the deck of the Bounty to figure out what was going on. As they did, the operator of the red mech had hopped out to join the discussion and claimed herself to be Nia, though, like the others, her appearance was off. Her hair was much too short for Nia's usual ponytail, and the beauty mark on her cheek was missing as well. She also seemed to have a preference for wearing red as opposed to cyan, like the water ninja Lloyd knew. On the other hand, this Master Wu, or Sensei Wu as he preferred to be called, looked pretty much identical to Lloyd's uncle, with the only real difference being their voices and that this one had a bamboo staff instead of a staff-sized flute. In the end, it was the four-headed dragon, and if they weren't one of the coolest things Lloyd had ever seen, he'd eat his own mech, that gave him an idea of what was going on. The four heads had been eyeing Lloyd suspiciously from the moment they had spotted him, and after giving the green ninja a speculative sniff, they had taken off into the air and vanished through some kind of portal before reappearing again out of a second one. Thankfully, Sensei Wu understood what they were trying to say. "I see," he said, stroking his beard. "It seems this Lloyd," he gestured towards Lloyd with his staff, "is not the one we know." Jay raised his nicked eyebrow. No offense, Sensei Wu, but we all knew that already. It's really obvious this guy's not a yay-tall brat with a bad haircut," he said, holding his hand out to demonstrate a child's height, earning a stern look from his sensei. Jay didn't even flinch. Another thing to add to the pile of oddities. This Jay seemed at least somewhat more confident than his. The Jay he knew would be a lot more anxious at the idea of talking back to Master Wu. "Indeed," Sensei Wu said dryly. "However, that is not what I meant." "Then what are you saying?" asked Zane, his voice lacking the automated lilt that Lloyd was so accustomed to. "Yeah, I'd like to know that too," Lloyd added. "I'm the only me there is, as far as I know, and that," he waved his hand in Jay's direction, "didn't describe me in the slightest." "You do have better hair," Jay joked, earning an elbow in the ribs from Kai to shut him up. Definitely more confident than his Jay. "What I mean is," Sensei Wu, sounding somewhat terse at their antics, "this is not our Lloyd. He is from another realm, one likely similar to ours, but also, as you can see, quite different." "Another realm?" Lloyd asked, raising his eyebrows. It sounded so far-fetched, but it would also explain all the inconsistencies he was noticing. "You mean like the underworld?" asked Cole. "Yes," Sensei Wu, though if he was really his uncle and friend's otherworldly counterparts, he could probably drop the quotations. "My father believed there to be 16 different realms, all connected to each other, though it is entirely possible there are more. It seems whatever wish my brother made on the mega-weapon has somehow switched my nephew with his counterpart in one such world." Kai frowned thoughtfully. "If I heard him right, I think Garmadon wished Lloyd was in a world where they didn't have to fight each other." They all turned to look at Lloyd, waiting for his input. Lloyd swallowed a lump in his throat and replied, "Yeah, Dad and I used to fight all the time, but a few months ago I finally convinced him to stop." That got some weird looks. "Convinced him to stop?" he asked. "Don't you mean you defeated him?" Cole added. Lloyd laughed, though the sound was slightly hollow. "Oh, we did defeat him, multiple times. My team and I used to beat back him and his army more times than I can count, but he'd always run off and try again another day. Talking him to stopping has worked way better than trashing his army in the long run." Everyone still looked dubious. "You just talked to him and suddenly he gave up?" Kai asked skeptically. Lloyd winced and rubbed the arm he'd nearly lost during that mess. "Okay, there was a whole lot more to it than just talking to each other, but it worked out in the end. The bottom line is he's not attacking Ninjago anymore, so everybody wins." The ninja around him looked unconvinced, but Wu stroked his beard, his expression contemplative. "I did not think such a thing was possible given the circumstances," he said. Lloyd could only shrug. "So did I for a long time," he admitted. "But my Uncle Wu told us the only way we'd ever beat Dad for good was to win the battle without fighting." Something about those words seemed to cause a shift in the air. Almost at once, some of the tension surrounding them all dissipated, and the ninja even let out a few snickers of amusement. Even Sensei Wu's expression seemed more at peace. "The best way to defeat an enemy is to make them your friend," he said with an air that this was something he had quoted multiple times. Lloyd, not fully understanding what had caused the shift in the atmosphere, but was grateful for it, nodded fervently. Yeah, exactly. Sensei Wu gave a soft chuckle of his own, then fixed Lloyd with a stern look. My nephew, will he be safe in your world? Lloyd nodded again. Where I was before I got here was one of the safest places I know. Plus, my friends and dad are there. They'll help him out. The ninja master studied him for honesty. Upon finding it, he turned away. There is still much to discuss, but I feel it would be best done over dinner. We have all had a trying day. Zane perked up at those words and started making his way to the bounty. I believe it's my turn to cook tonight. The rest of the ninja began filing away slowly to go about their business before dinner, leaving Lloyd to stand awkwardly off to the side, wondering what he was supposed to do until then. Seeing this, Jay sidled up to him with a friendly grin. So, is the Zane in your world the greatest cook ever? 'Cause I'm pretty sure ours has that title in the bag. Lloyd shot him a grateful grin and replied, To be honest, I don't know. I'm not sure if my Zane even eats. Jay blinked at him in surprise, but then nodded understanding. Ninjoid, right. Zane won't let me mess around too much with his mechanics, but I guess the eating thing is optional. But, who wouldn't want to eat if they could? Lloyd nodded in reply, and that was all it took for Jay to start talking again. Well, let me tell you, you're in for an experience. Zane's cooking is great. Just don't try to eat anything Cole makes. The guy can't even boil water. I heard that! Cole shouted from somewhere in the bounty, sounding very offended. Good! Jay called back with no remorse, before turning back to Lloyd. Anyway, as I was saying, in the time it took to cook dinner, Lloyd found he could add another dimensional difference to the pile. While his own friend was prone to fits of nervous babbling, this Jay really loved to talk. Not that he minded. All the things Jay was saying were pretty interesting. But as the smell of good food began wafting through the ship, Lloyd was beginning to feel overwhelmed with information overload. Thankfully, Cole came to his rescue. Okay, Motormouth, he said, taking Lloyd by the shoulders and physically steering him away from Jay before the lightning ninja could regale him with the story of how Cole used to be terrified of dragons and his hilarious first attempts at flying one. Maybe don't scare away our only lead for getting Lloyd back. Who's scaring him away? Jay replied. I'm just being friendly. Better than Sir Glares a lot over there, he added, pointing over at Kai. Lloyd had noticed that this Kai had still been sending him suspicious looks throughout the wait. And it honestly surprised him to see someone who looked like one of the friendliest guys he knew act so cold. Well, one of us has to be ready in case this is all just some trap, Kai replied bluntly. Lloyd's expression fell, and both Jay and Cole let out groans of annoyance. Thankfully, at that moment, Nia walked out to call them to dinner. She had changed out of the armor for her neck, but to Lloyd's surprise, she was still dressed as vividly in red as her brother's ninja gi. She also noticed him staring. Something wrong? She asked in an unsure tone, causing both Kai and Jay to shoot him suspicious looks. Guess Jay's crush on Nia was universal. Nice to see some things never change. Lloyd quickly shook his head. No, nothing, he said politely. I'm just surprised. You and Kai seem to be much more into the matching twin thing than the ones I know. He then quickly hurried past her into the galley, failing to see the others staring after him in confusion, and for Kai to silently mouth, twin thing? To Nia. Taking a seat near Sensei Wu and Zane in front of a dinner that really did look delicious, Lloyd waited for the rest of them to file in. Kai didn't even wait for them to fill up their plates before he went straight to business. So, how are we going to get our Lloyd back? He asked. Yeah, Lloyd agreed as he slowly dished himself up. No offense, but I'd like to get home sooner rather than later. Everyone over there is probably really freaking out. The best way to do it would probably be on the Ultra Dragon, wouldn't it? Cole asked between bites. The only way to travel between worlds is on a dragon. There are other ways, Sensei Wu said as he sipped his tea, but none readily in reach. The only method available to us as we are now is with the Ultra Dragon. Nice to see Wu was needlessly cryptic no matter what world you were in. Wait, what about that traveler's tea you used to get Garmadon out of the Underworld? Asked Nia, clicking her chopsticks together thoughtfully. Wait, what? Lloyd asked incredulously, dropping his own chopsticks, but he was ignored. Sadly, no, said Sensei Wu. For traveler's tea to work, we must have a specific destination in mind. However, we have no idea which realm our guest comes from. Without knowing the correct realm, you could potentially end up anywhere, and with no means to return. For all we know, there could be multiple Ninjago's out there as well. But how's the Ultra Dragon supposed to know which realm to go to if we ourselves don't even know? Asked Zane. They won't, Sensei Wu replied. So it's a guess, Lloyd said. Just keep going to different worlds until we find mine? Precisely, said Sensei Wu. As is, that is our best option. It may be the best option, but it's still not a great one, said Kai pessimistically. We can't just let him, he jerked his chopsticks at Lloyd, fly off on our dragon to who knows where on the possibility they might send Ultra back with Lloyd. Lloyd tried not to be offended and shoved a chopstick full of food into his mouth to avoid saying something he'd regret. So we all go, said Cole with a shrug. When traveling to unknown worlds, it's better to have safety in numbers. But if we all go, who's going to stop Garmadon? Asked Jay. Plus, while I do believe Ultra Dragon has the strength to carry us all, we would not all be able to fit safely on their back at the speed in which they would need to create a portal, added Zane. They lapsed into silence. Pessimism aside, Kai was right. It wasn't that great of a plan, but they need to make it work. And Lloyd was good at making difficult situations work. After thinking for a moment, he spoke up. What if we built a carriage? He suggested. Something we could attach to the Ultra Dragon to pull that could fit everyone inside. The ninja all looked thoughtful at that. Yeah, said Jay, his face lighting up as he thought about it. Yeah, that could work. If we build it with enough suspension that it can follow behind Ultra rather than drag beneath them, we could have a dimension-jumping road trip. And what about Garmadon? Asked Kai, still not fully on board with the plan. I doubt he'll just stand back and leave Ninjago alone while we're off who knows where. Lloyd grinned at that. Leave that to me, he said. The grass is always greener. Chapter